Hey everybody, State Senator Erica Geis here to show you how to make a nose clamp for your cloth face mask with just a few simple materials. Now cloth face masks are excellent for helping prevent coronavirus pathogens that cause COVID-19. And with so many options for making cloth face masks out there, I'm going to show you how to accessorize your cloth face mask with a nose clamp for an even more snug fit against the face. Here's what you'll need: a cloth face mask, a pattern cut into a 7-inch by 1 3/4 inch rectangle, cotton fabric or fabric scrap that's at least 3.5 inches wide by 7 inches long, some straight pins, a tin tie from a coffee bag, a hand needle and thread, a sewing machine that's optional, an iron, also optional, a pencil, and a tweezers, or some other tool that grips, such as a needle nose pliers. This project takes under an hour to make, if using a machine to make the casing, a little longer if sewing by hand. Now you don't want to try to glue down the tin tie, even with fabric glue. The tin tie needs to be able to adhere to it really well and still be make your face mask machine washable, and so that it's comfortable against the wearer's face. So let's get started. All right, we're going to start by making our pattern. So we're going to take our ruler, some scratch paper, and we are going to line this up. I like to use the edge just because it's already a straight edge. We're going to go down with our pencil to about the 7-inch mark. And then we're going to go in to 1 3/4 inches. 1 inch, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. And mark right there and make my line. And then I'm going to make that other line again, just so it's nice and straight. Now, you don't have to make your own pattern, because at the end, there'll be a link to a PDF of this casing pattern. So we're just going to cut out the pattern for our casing for our nose clamp with the paper scissors, like so. I'm going to take that and we're going to set that aside. Take my scratch paper and put it over here. Next, we're going to take our fabric. And we're going to cut off a nice strip of it so you've got enough to work with. So this is some fabric that I have from another project, some other things that I've been working on, including cloth face masks. And we're just going to cut off a nice strip of that. Now, if you don't have fabric lying around, one thing that you can do, because we really want to make sure that these are made out of cotton, is if you have clothes that you are going to be getting rid of, you've outgrown them, you know, and it's 100% cotton, that's something you might want to consider utilizing for this. So we're going to take our fabric that we have. So here's the front side, here's the back side. Front side has the pattern where it's most visible. We're going to fold it in half. Now, usually I like to iron this flat. And we're going to take the pattern that we cut out, and here's one that I cut out before, and we are going to pin this to our fabric through both sides. I've got my pins on my little pin cushion here, and I'm just going to pin it through diagonally. Now, if you're using long pins, like I am, straight pins, you're going to want to do it on the diagonal because they're a bit too long to do it on the short end to go straight through if you want to keep your pattern and your fabric nice and flat. And I'm going to put 2 more pins on the side just to help keep it flat. And then we're going to take our fabric scissors. We're just going to cut outside of the lines of this pattern Now this does not need to be perfect because you're gonna have the seam allowance is what's going to be on the inside when we're all done with making the casing, and it will be hidden. Also, you'll see in a later step that we'll be trimming off this section that doesn't look so pretty. Put these aside. Then we're gonna take our pins out. I like to put them right back into my pin cushion. We're gonna put our pattern aside. And then we're gonna get sewing. All right, so here we are with the sewing machine. You can also do this by hand, but it's a little faster by machine. So we've got our fabric here. Right sides are still together, so you can see that. And we are just gonna make a straight line down the length of the fabric. Now, to make things a little easier, you could also draw that straight line and then follow that. But I've been doing this for a minute, so I am just going to sew a line about 1/4 of an inch in. I've already threaded my machine with the bobbin and the needle and everything. Sew forward, sew back. I'm just going to finish that top section. I don't personally like to start at the very edge. I like to line up my needle again with the previous stitches. And then bring it off. So what we're going to do next is we're going to make another parallel line right here next to the one that we just made. We're going to put our fabric under the presser foot, line up the needle about 3/4 of an inch to the right of the line that you just sewed. We're going to repeat what we did before. We're going to finish that line that we just sewed. And we're going to set that aside. I'm just going to put my needle back underneath the presser foot, my thread under the presser foot. Turn the machine off. All right, now that I've set the machine aside, what we're going to do next is we're going to take our fabric scissors and we're just going to cut along the outside of those 2 lines that we just made. Okay, so now that we've got a skinnier piece of fabric here for our casing, we're going to take our pencil and we're going to kind of open up the tube like this by rubbing our fingers together and slide our pencil in there all the way through. And then we are going to turn it this way so you guys can all see. We're going to bring this top part down to make a little cuff. Now you can also use your eraser to make it a little more stable. if you need to. But you can see how we've made this little cuff right here. And we're going to take our pencil out, holding that cuff pretty gently, but enough so you can still slide the pencil out, the pencil back. And we're going to take our tweezers or your needle nose pliers, and we're going to slide the back end in there so you can open that up. And you can see there's the opening. And we're going to take our tweezers, grab some of that fabric from the inside, and pull it out. And we're just going to keep doing that a few times. Now, it's going to get a little bunchy in there, so you can just slide the back of your tweezers in, or you can grab your pencil, either way, and slide that in there. And you're going to grab that fabric some more. You're going to keep grabbing, grab, pull it through. You can see our inside is, what was our inside is now going to be on the outside. So we're pulling this casing so that it's right side out. Now, this is the part that can take the longest and can be a little frustrating, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And just in the interest of time, I've got one over here that was done earlier. And you can see this one. So this eventually becomes this. And then what I like to do next is I like to take the completed one and then iron it. So let's go do that. Do the iron. Okay, with your iron set on cotton or your highest setting, this is where you want to take your casing. You just want to press those seams flat. Now be careful, don't steam yourself. I do front and back side. So now that we have made our casing, we've ironed it, we're ready to put our tin tie in it. Now, most of us are familiar with tin ties from our favorite bags of coffee. And so if you open your coffee, you see this thing that helps keep it sealed. You can take that and just rip it right off. They're placed with adhesive. And now you've got your tin tie, which is really, really malleable. You can see that. And forms, it's going to be wide enough to form to the bridge of the nose and over the cheekbones. Now, if you're wondering what to do now that you've destroyed your bag of coffee, put it in a Ziploc bag, put it into a container, so that way it'll still stay nice and fresh. So we're going to take our tin tie, and if you want, you can scrape off the adhesive that might be on it. Doesn't really matter because it's going to be inside your casing. And you're just going to slide that in there. You're going to feel until it kind of comes right about center. Now you're going to have it, it's still going to have these two floppy ends. That's okay. You want that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our hand needle I like to keep all of my little supplies nearby. And you're just going to make a little tack. So this is already threaded. So you thread it, put a knot at the end, and you're going to tack it. So just a couple of stitches right at the edge of your tin tie. And you're going to tie that off. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to keep that tin tie inside your casing. You're going to trim close to the knot. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So make a couple of stitches, nothing too fancy, just to close that tin tie in there. I like to use my thumb to help guide where the knot is. And sometimes I'll do a third little slip knot there just for a little extra security. We're going to trim that close to the edge. Now, alrighty, so we've got our mask and we've got our tin tie, which is in its casing. And you probably noticed that there's still, it's not completely snug around the tin tie, and that is by design. So you have room to sew around it. And we're going to figure out which is the top section. So if you don't have something already in through the wire for the nose, sometimes people use a paper clip stretched out. This can be added to those, so it gives it a little more security. So we're going to find our top. I like it to have the pleats facing up, but whatever works for your mask, if your mask has pleats, if it doesn't have pleats. And then you're going to go flip it up so that the part that touches the face is pointing to the ceiling. You're just going to align your mask with your tin tie. And you're going to take your straight needles and you are going to pin through all the fabric. You're just going to do the section that is at the top that's closest to the edge. So one pin, it might feel a little awkward. Two pins. Sort of adjust the tin tie in there. 3 pins. And then I like to do a 4th. 3 or 4, either should be fine. Now part of why we do this is if you're going to be machine stitching, you want to be able to follow the line of your basting stitch for when you top stitch it on. Just a simple in and out, and as you go along, take your straight pins out. A really good friend of mine gave me this little wrist pin cushion, and so I like to use that because it makes it so much easier. I don't have to figure out where I put my pin cushion. You can also, I have another pin cushion in here. You can also stick it wherever you have a pin cushion. Pin cushion is a really good accessory to have. I didn't have it originally on the list of items, but it's a great accessory to help keep the pins from going all over the place. So we just go in and out as straight of a stitch as possible. Down the length of your casing and tin tie. Now be careful if you've got ear loops, like I almost just did, to not sew through the ear loop. Trying to make that as even and as possible. Go all the way through. And then one more, and we're just going to cut our thread a bit that we were just basting. Okay, so here we are back at our machine, and we've got our face mask with our tin tie and its casing basted to the mask. And we are going to very carefully, we're going to feel around for where that tin tie is. We're going to slide this into the machine. You're going to use your fingers partially as your guide for where the tie is. And you're going to lower your needle into the fabric along your basting stitches. You're going to follow your stitches because you want to top stitch this. As close to, if not on those basting stitches. Now with the needle still in, you're going to lift your presser foot, turn. This is why you've got those extra corners there on the side. Sew down a little more. A little past your tin tie. Back stitch. Forward stitch. Careful to not hit your tin tie. You're going to align that needle and you're going to come back. Now if you've got pleats, be careful not to sew your pleats in. One way to avoid that, lift your presser foot, lift your pleat up, put your presser foot back down, continue sewing. Now you can use your thumb on the underside to feel where the tin tie is. So that you're getting a nice secure stitch on the other side. When you get to the end, past the edge of the tin tie, lift your presser foot, turn your fabric, go down, back stitch, needle back in, sew forward. Right to where your basting stitches began. Go a little further. You're going to continue your stitches. If necessary, I'm just doing a couple of extra back stitches here. Remove your fabric from the machine. And then we're going to trim any excess thread. And we're going to set our machine aside again. Now that we've sewn our nose clamp to our face mask, we can just trim really carefully those basting stitches. Now you can also stitch down the bottom side as well, just so that you've got a nice straight line on both the top and the bottom. Use my tweezers here. You can also use a seam ripper if you've got one to just pull out these basting stitches. Sometimes it's a little tricky. Now, one thing you can do that doesn't really matter that much because it's on the inside, you can fold down those side edges of your nose clamp casing before you sew it down. And now you can see, you can hold it, you can get, it gives a nice hold. And we will try it on. Put it against the face, loop it around the ears, bring it up to the nose, pull down on the chin, and clamp it around your nose and bridge and along your cheekbones for a nice, secure fit. Now with your nose clamp, you can attach it to a balaclava, doing the same instructions, just instead of on one of these, just along the top edge of the part that goes over your face. And you too can amp up your mask game with a nose clamp for your cloth face mask, as we all do our part to prevent spread of the coronavirus. With your cloth face mask, with a nose clamp, you too can show off your amped up, clamped up game face in the battle against COVID-19.